Here's the story of 6 buying experts who were very successful in their jobs, leading procurement offices across the country, from Alaska and PA to Arkansas.
Along those lines, I think we can all agree too that in addition to that internal communication that is important and amongst each other, whether it be an evaluation team or whether it be walking down the hall, talking to a colleague, there's also that communication with external sources, which means suppliers. We all can agree that communication between suppliers and staff is invaluable in learning of new ideas, new concepts, in developing solicitations, and deciding on to use a cooperative purchasing vehicle. Now that we're maybe working remotely for a long period of time or maybe permanently, will the effectiveness of these interactions be impacted if they're done by phone or by webinar versus in person? We know a lot of times those in-person meetings are very important, but I wonder what the impact of doing it this way will have on staff working remotely.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we can see just from these kind of calls that we have together as a team that you can communicate really effectively, maybe not 100% of your effectiveness, but probably the 90-95%. And I think that's true for suppliers engaging with government procurement officials. I think that government procurement officials really need to resist the temptation of allowing the sort of closed office to be an excuse to shut off communication with the supplier community. Because as you said, Mike, that's so vital. If you aren't talking to your suppliers while you're creating a solicitation, you really aren't able to get a good perspective on what's happened in that industry since the last time you put the bid out. And you're going to end up with a procurement and ultimately a contract which doesn't best serve your end users if you're not getting that feedback from your suppliers. So I think we need to be creative, but I think shutting off communication with suppliers during this time is probably the worst thing that we can be doing in public procurement.
Yeah, and suppliers, like you said, may need to look at their presentations and may need to change it a little bit for a virtual type meeting. But in reality, suppliers may be able to meet with more people over a webinar. It might be easier to get people together if you're a supplier through this manner, as opposed to try to get everyone in a conference room together. So in some ways, it might be easier and better because more people might be available this way too. So it might be easier to get people at the last minute because you don't have to travel somewhere and get people together. So it might be simpler in some ways. So that's yet to be seen, but I agree that supplier interaction still needs to happen, and I think it'll still be effective.